Terminator 2D. No fate.
How's it going, everyone? This is Dixon of the Ultimate Gamer. I'm logging on. Today we're going to check on a movie-based game that was released 2 months ago that was based off of one of the best movie sequels of all time, Terminator 2: The Judgment Day. The sequel to the 1984 film smashed the box office back in 1991 to create promotional materials like with toys, action figures, posters, soundtracks, and you guessed it, video games. There were video games based off of Terminator 2. Some were hit and miss, but the T2 game that stand out the most was the arcade game. No, not the inferior console ports of the arcade game, but the actual arcade game, which is the real way of playing it, of course. There were also games based off the first Terminator film from 1984, and there were hit and miss for some of them as well. My favorite one based off the first one is the Sega CD game. Now, both of the first two Terminator films were awesome. Most people would say the second one was better than the first one. Well, with me, between the first two films, it's debatable. But I'll tell you one thing, there are only two Terminator films in my book. The first two that were directed by James Cameron. And there's also other Terminator games out there as well that are not movie tie-ins, but connected though. That were like first-person shooters exclusive on the PC from Bethesda back in the 90s. Which I hope they get remastered or get brought over to digital storefronts one day. And there's also spin-offs like RoboCop vs. Terminator, which was a badass game. Now back on track with Terminator 2. Last year in 2025, they shown a trailer for a new T2 game. That's a side-scroller shooter. It also pays homage to retro games from the 1980s and the 1990s. And of course, this Terminator game is based off the 1991 sequel, titled as Terminator 2D No Fate. Developed by Bitmap Barrow, published by Reef Entertainment, and designed and programmed by Mike Tucker. Terminator 2D No Fate is available on all digital storefronts for $30. Or if you want a physical Day 1 edition for $60, that's also available too. And I do have the Nintendo Switch version of that one, by the way. And there's also the collector's edition for $120, which I'll have to pass on that one, unfortunately. I got a gift card for Christmas, so I decided to use it to get the physical Day 1 edition of Terminator 2D No Fate on the Switch. And that's the version I've been playing, of course. Mostly on the loading dock so I can capture the gameplay footage. Plus playing out the big screen. By far, this game is pretty faithful to the actual movie. They choose the ultimate fate for the franchise with this one. Though the game is not perfect, but still one of the best Terminator games ever made. If not the best. Now, for the gamers who played any of the Terminator 2 games by the time when the movie was popular, no matter on an 8-bit console or 16-bit console or portable or the arcade game, many people are thinking that they're going to play John Connor in the Future War and the T-100 in current time. Well, you got half of that right pretty much. But this time they took more of a diverse direction when it comes to playable characters and storylines. And there will be alternative story choices later in the game. In other words, choose the right fate. Mainly during the story mode, there will be levels between the current time, which is in Los Angeles 1995, and the Future War, which is in Los Angeles 2029. Which, in our current time, that's 3 years from now. And mainly throughout the game, you're either going to be playing as Sarah Connor or the adult John Connor. There will be levels where you control as the T-800, as well as you control the boy John Connor during that epic chase scene where the boy John Connor is getting away from the T-1000 on his dirt bike. Also depends on the story choice you choose later in the game. Characters and levels may differ. Now, the start of the story mode, which took place before the actual movie plot, a year earlier in 1994, where Sarah trains the boy John Connor up to being a soldier, which the boy John Connor was kidnapped by desert bandits, so she has to kill all the desert bandits to get her boy back. After that, she decided to postpone John's training for more important events, which was to infiltrate Cyberdyne systems. And for those of you who've seen the movie, you would probably know what happens next. Then after that part, the story progresses into the Future War as the adult John Connor, and then from there, the story progresses to 1995 where the movie starts. Now, when playing Sarah Connor in the prequel missions, you start out with a pistol, but you can find a machine upgrade that's most likely hidden on each stage during the early mission. And when playing the adult John Connor in the future, you have a default plasma rifle where you can have 3 weapon upgrades, which can be used for a limited amount of time. But you can also carry up to 5 grenades, as well as find more. So controlling both Connors in different timelines do play precisely the same, except Sarah Connor slides and John Connor can roll. But controlling either one of these characters, it makes me feel like playing Contra or Metal Slug. When controlling the T-800, it's totally different since he's a machine. Like in the bar, you're just kicking ass to acquire clothing, guns, and a motorcycle. But later in the game, depending on what decision you go with, he's armed with the minigun, practically armed to the teeth to be exact. Now, to bear in mind, during the fight scene in the bar, they do have the 2 songs from the movie, Bad to the Bone by George Thorogood and the country music song, but I had it mute for copyright purposes. Now, there are different types of gameplay modes. Some are unlockable after completing the requirements that it tells you to do, which I haven't got all of it done yet, but kind of working on it here and there. Now, the Terminator 2D No Fate game is faithful to the movie itself, but the story mode for the game feels like it's short, and they could have added more to it. Now, I understand that the game is mainly focused on the second film, but it would have been awesome if they added more feature missions where you can play as Kyle Reese, or even have the 1984 levels from the first movie where you can control as Kyle or Sarah. In fact, Kyle Reese is not even mentioned in the game. However, during the cutscene in the Future War between Commander John Connor, he was just talking to a sergeant, where they're both filling in each other about Skynet sending a Terminator to each timeline for 1984 and 1995, where the sergeant goes into 1984, but they don't mention the name Reese. In fact, you don't get to see the sergeant's face. You get to see kind of like the chin and mouth part when during the cutscenes, but you don't get to see his face. Maybe they just couldn't get the likeness of Michael Biehn, who portrayed as Reese from the first movie, for this one, since basically this game is based off the second movie anyway. Come to think of it, Kyle Reese's name hasn't been mentioned in the theatrical release of the second movie at all. I mean, they talked about this soldier character, but not his name. Oh, however, in the extended version of Terminator 2, there was a scene where Michael Biehn reprises his character as Reese, during Sarah Connor's dream sequence when she's locked up in the hospital to inform her that the Terminator is back and they're after their son, John. That's the only time Reese was mentioned and shows his face in the second film altogether. That's pretty much it. Also, speaking of likeness of the original characters from the film, for some reason they didn't get the likeness of Arnold's character as the T-800. I don't know what the issue is there, but they managed to get the likeness of Linda Hamilton, Edward Furlong, Joe Morton, and Robert Patrick, but not the likeness of Arnold. I don't know what's going on there. Well, despite the drawbacks, these indie developers really did nail the game pretty damn well. It's nice that they added prequel levels to the story, like the events that happened a year prior to the movie, and depending on which character you're playing as, the game feels more like you're playing Contra or Metal Slug, except Terminator 2D No Fate is a single-player game. Come to think of it, it would be nice if they had local co-op modes like in the Future War, where you can play as John Connor and Kyle Reese to fight against a faction of Terminators or something. That would be kind of neat if they added that. Now, there's not a whole lot more to say about Terminator 2D No Fate, except for the fact that I don't want to spoil anything since the game just came out. No matter what digital platform, like PC or Steam or Switch or PS4 or 5 or Xbox, I would say $30 for a digital copy is decent. Is a decent price for that one. But if you don't mind paying for a physical copy like I did, that's also optional. But if you spot the game on sale regardless, there would be absolutely no excuse to turn it down. Terminator 2D No Fate is recommendable regardless, especially if you're a Terminator fan and a fan of retro gaming. One of these days, I should do story review episodes on the Terminator games, like an episode based off the first movie for one story review, and same for the second movie, including this one. And that's all there is to say about it. Thank you all very much for watching. This is Dixon of the Ultimate Gamer. I'm logging off. And I will be back for another episode.